Hello everyone and welcome to Onefootball. Today we're going to discuss why Sir Alex Ferguson is the greatest manager of all time. During Fergie's 26 years in charge of Manchester United, he outlasted 24 managers at Real Madrid, 18 managers at Chelsea and 14 at Manchester City. He saw off 4 British Prime Ministers and he won an unprecedented 13 titles and 25 other trophies that included 2 Champions League. He had a back and forth in which he always won. If there was a battle, he made sure he won the war, with the likes of Kenny Dalglish, Kevin Keegan, Arsene Wenger, Gerard Houllier, Rafa Benitez, Roberto Mancini and the current Manchester United manager, Jose Mourinho. But the question is, what made Ferguson so great? Why was he undoubtedly the greatest Premiership manager of all time? So that's enough from me, but we've got 2 massive Manchester United fans here. We've got Statman Dave and we've got Stephen Howson, who are going to break down what it's like to be a Man United fan when Sir Alex Ferguson was your manager. I'll let Steve Howson, you can go first.
I think we probably took him for granted, to be honest. He was the only manager that I'd known since I was almost 30. I'd been going since 1990. He was appointed in '86 when I was 2. So there was no other manager at Manchester United for me. So 5 years ago, when he resigned and he retired and walked off into the sunset as a champion, it was a brave new world for us. And we didn't really know what it was like until we had something else to compare him to. I've been looking back on recent reports. I've been looking around that 2005-2006 season and reading some of the reports from people demanding that Fergie goes, demanding that Fergie's past it. And it was arguably his greatest achievement was coming back and beating that Arsenal invincible side, beating that Chelsea back-to-back title side and a Liverpool side that had won the Champions League. And he went and did it. We won 3 on a bounce, was in 3 Champions League finals. And he built like his 3rd absolutely stonking great team. I don't think we can put into words just how good a manager Fergie was over a period of decades. It was decades he was the best one.
And to you, Dave, in terms of Man United fans, how did Fergie raise your expectations from when he started to when he ended?
Well, I think it's big, isn't it? It's the 26 years of waiting United had to do between their last league title to when Fergie joined and obviously won the Premier League. And I think that's a big thing. It's the standards. 13 Premier League titles. That's more than most of the clubs have ever managed in their entire history. And I think that's the level that Ferguson got from the players in his tenure. What you want a title every other season, which is absolutely incredible. Steve mentioned the 3 in a row. Steve mentioned these great sides. And that was the beauty of Ferguson, was his continual evolution as a manager. Tactics, personnel. He kept it moving forward. And I think that's why he stuck around for so long, was that ability to change, that Kaizen. I'm going to get better and better and better as a manager. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to bring people in like Carlos Queiroz, like Thielen, like René Mullenstein. And I think it was that beauty that he was such a good man manager that we're only going to look back on and go, wow, he did it for such a long time. He kept these guys competitive for so long. We look around teams, you think in Leicester City, look at them now, you think in the Chelsea team, when they won the title and the drop-off, Fergie kept coming back with better teams. And to look at that and to have to speak to some of your older players and be like, look, sorry, Mark, I don't think you're going to be around next season. I'm going to have to evolve this team. Or look, Rude, sorry, there's a young lad coming through called Cristiano Ronaldo and we need to build the team around there. And that was the beauty of Ferguson. It's that foresight and that ability to evolve things that made him so good. And again, you go back to the ambitions and the titles and everything like that. The only reason why he was there for so long was that ability to move things on. And it's an incredible sort of, you're looking to all the other managers in the world. Nobody's got that. Nobody has the Ferguson mentality of sticking around for so long. The other guy, obviously, Arsene Wenger, and he's gone now as well. So I don't know whether this is the breed of that old school manager that can do it just consistently for such a high period of time.
So then if you talk about the consistency, when you look back at all the managers that he's basically outclassed, it's gone from Kevin Keegan to Gerard Houllier, then to Arsene Wenger, to Mourinho, to Mancini, and the list goes on and on. How is he able to just keep adapting to each one of those different challenges, and what kind of ability that Ferguson had that no one else did?
I think Dave really touched on it quite well when he said he wasn't afraid to bring in other people and experts in other areas that would take us an extra 1%, an extra 2% here and there. He mentioned René Mullenstein, he mentioned Carlos Queiroz, but even in the start, he didn't start with Brian Kidd. I think it was Arthur Alberston was one of his first assistants that he had at Manchester United, and then he did bring in Brian Kidd, and he brought in Walter Smith at a time when Walter Smith had just come from being a first-team manager himself. He always looked for people who could bring that extra couple of % out of him, and he was happy to delegate. And I think that even though his workload was clearly severe, he was at every single youth team game up until his last season. He knew the ins and outs of everything, from the groundsmen to the security guards and everything, because he'd seen this club built around him, and he was so comfortable in the job. He was unchallenged as manager. He didn't have the pressure that every other manager has got, because he'd earned the right to do whatever he wanted with the football club, and it was built in his image. I think it's no coincidence that the two greatest managers that this club has seen, in Sir Matt Busby and Sir Alex Ferguson, had both managed to stick around for the length of time that they'd stuck around, and they've done it with very particular sets of circumstances. Yes, they were successful, but they've also done it playing youth, by playing a certain brand of football. And Dave mentioned that, are we seeing the end of an era? Obviously, I wasn't born at the time when Sir Matt Busby moved on, but if you listen to some of the things that Sir Matt Busby was saying after he'd retired in the 70s and in the early 80s, he was talking about football in a way that you could interpret that he was talking about today, where everybody wants a quick turnaround, everybody wants to succeed instantly. And I think that sometimes boards have to just give patience and have to allow someone to build a club in their image, similar to what Sir Matt did, similar to what Sir Alex did. And I think the reason that them two gents was able to stay around and be successful for so long was because they was comfortable in their own skin. They knew what they wanted to do. They had confidence in their ability to do it, and they was given the time and the patience by the board to go and achieve it.
Over Fergie's 26 years, he was able to take on such great challenges and then establish such great teams. So, Stephen, in terms of that 90s team, like, who did they overcome and what made them so good?
I think the first thing that we overcome in the 90s, even though they wasn't successful at the time, was Liverpool, was getting the hoodoo over Liverpool, winning that first title in 26 years. The first major threat come with the Moneybags Blackburn side, and obviously Alan Shearer up front. When he was sold to Newcastle, they became the major threat, and Newcastle ran us very, very close in the mid-90s. And I think Sir Alex overcome those, and I think you could say he built 2, maybe even 3 teams in that era. So the one that won the first couple of Premier Leagues, the double winners, that famous side of, we're talking Kanchelskis, Hughes, Cantona, Pallister, Bruce. That was a team that would fight you on the pitch and they would fight you off the pitch. And they was a pure power team. We used wingers like Kanchelskis and Giggs. We really got about you, and we had the majestic Cantona in the middle pulling the strings. But it wasn't really suited to play in European football. So as Cantona started to decline, and that season, as much as we want to be romantic about it, Cantona was on the wane in that final season, and as much as we'd have loved to have seen him stick around, he moved on of his own doing. But Sir Alex replaced him with a lot of youngsters, and he replaced him with the likes of Teddy Sheringham, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and we changed to a whole new system, and we went back to having a proper strike partnership. Because Cantona played in between the lines. He wasn't really a number 9. He basically did what he wanted. He was more in the sort of Zidane, sort of Scholesy kind of mould. It was proper detached from the forward line. When he found the actual magic number with York and Cole, and we went on that tear that we went on in 1999 with David Beckham putting in unparalleled balls from the right-hand side, a vintage Ryan Giggs that was twisting up defenders for days, the midfield with Scholes and Roy Keane, which is unbeatable in my opinion, and then a back four which has got Jaap Stam in there. You've got a young Gary Neville, Dennis Irwin and Peter Schmeichel in there. One of the greatest footballing sides that's ever been assembled. And Fergie put 2 of those sides together. I mean, there's a lot of people think that the 94 double winning side would stack up against all of the European Cup winning sides that we've ever had. Unfortunately, didn't do it in Europe. We was undone by teams that were just far better than us. But that 1999 side, what Ferguson assembled with that side that went on to win 3 titles back-to-back, as well as a European Cup, it takes some doing. And to do it with the level of homegrown players in there that we did as well, shows how much of a magician the guy is.
Then if we turn to you, Dave, in the 2000s, how did he then evolve the squad even further to take on the new challenges of more managers coming in with money to spend?
Well, I think the big first one, of course, was the Invincibles and beating the Invincibles. And it was another interesting period for Manchester United. Again, an evolution of a side. And I think for me, what characterised that side is kind of Ruud van Nistelrooy as a number 9. United sort of went away from playing traditionally 2 strikers to maybe a 4-5-1 or 4-3-3. Again, this was Carlos Queiroz's first time at the club. You know, he did leave in 2003 to join Real Madrid, but that was after they'd beaten that Invincibles team. You're looking at merging someone like a Ruud van Nistelrooy with a midfield 3. You know, Nicky Butt's going to be in there, Roy Keane, and of course Paul Scholes. That season, Paul Scholes scored 20 goals in 52 games and arguably played as more of an attacking midfielder, closer to Ruud van Nistelrooy. But again, we're talking about evolution, how he moved on. The likes of Solskjaer, being a striker, moved out wide, put in some really good deliveries from the right-hand side or the left wing. And you're looking at signings like Veron. Of course, Veron didn't quite work out at Manchester United, but the idea behind that was perfect. You know, circulating the ball, having a playmaker in there that could play next to Scholes. In theory, it didn't quite work. In practice, it was one of those things where it was a beautiful idea, but it didn't come off. But again, Ferguson was thinking about evolving football and taking United to that next step. Of course, Ruud van Nistelrooy, that season that United beat the Invincibles, that great Arsenal team, he scored 25 goals and was Premier League top scorer, outscoring Thierry Henry, who previously that before had been absolutely on fire. But I think taking it further, that sort of ended in 2006, arguably ended when Cristiano Ronaldo joined Manchester United and Ferguson had to look for a new model. Again, another big signing there was Michael Carrick from deep in midfield. Again, Michael Carrick, a midfielder that arguably Ferguson wanted with Veron, someone that could sit deep, that could control the tempo, that could step in and defend. That's what Veron didn't have, is that defensive ability, and that's what Michael Carrick has in abundance. He can tackle, he can intercept, but he can control the tempo, which moves us on to our second sort of great United team, that 2008 side, you know, with the likes of Owen Hargreaves working midfield, but Paul Scholes completely running the show. And you've still got Ryan Giggs knocking around. How long he was at United and how long he was successful with Ferguson is not only credit to the Welshman, but Ferguson's longevity of evolving him as a footballer. And then you build that team around one of the greatest players in Man United's history, and that is Cristiano Ronaldo. 42 goals on the season.
Talk about the defence, Dave. Talk about the defence.
They've not even touched the defence. We're talking Rio Ferdinand. We're talking Nemanja Vidic. We're talking about Patrice Evra. And Wes Brown at right-back that season was unbelievable. You're thinking what Wes Brown did defending that Ronaldo side was fantastic. But then you have 2 players there that are complete defenders. Both Nemanja Vidic and Rio Ferdinand were so good on and off the ball. And then in goal, Edwin van der Sar. Again, another great side that Ferguson built himself. And again, that's the legacy of it. It's these building blocks, these players that he's brought in that arguably turn into champions at Manchester United under Ferguson.
So then when you look at the way he's able to build a relationship with his players, so I was lucky enough to interview Ryan Giggs and he spoke about how Sir Alex was basically a father figure to him. How was Sir Alex able to just be such a man manager when it came to players and know when it's time for a player to leave? I'll give that one to you, Stephen.
No idea. I have absolutely no idea. When you listen to, I mean, I've read pretty much every single autobiography that's ever come out and every single book that anyone ever talks about Manchester United in. It just seems that he had a real human side to him. He cared. He knew when to be hard, and he was definitely hard at times, but he knew when to put an arm around someone. He knew the right thing to do with the right players. You know, there's that famous story of the apprentices hiding in cupboards and jumping out of windows when he went round to Lee Sharp's house. I mean, can you imagine the newspapers now if Mourinho had gone round to Pogba's and found Jesse Lingard and Pogba in there about to go on the beer for the night and absolutely roasted the pair of them? This is what Fergie did. He had spies all over Manchester. These players couldn't go out anywhere without Ferguson getting a call. He knew where they were, and he knew the times to let someone have a little bit of freedom and when to rein them completely. And like he did with Ryan Giggs, he didn't let Ryan Giggs have an inch. But by the same rule, Eric Cantona basically did what he wanted. I mean, there's a really good story about Pallister saying he got onto a team bus and his shirt was untucked and the manager absolutely tore him a new one. And then Cantona turns up, he's wearing trainers and he's not even got a tie on. And he just goes, "Come on, Eric, you need to sit down." he always knew the right way to treat every single player. And there's some fantastic stories from people who've worked alongside him. Paul McGuinness, one of the U-team players, has said he spoke to the security guards at Carrington and he said every single one of them's got a little bit of a story where Fergie would have an actual relationship with them. He'd know their names. He'd know the names of their children, their grandchildren. And how he managed to do this, I don't know. I don't know if he keeps a cheat sheet notebook where he writes everything down, or if he's just got a brain that's able to retain so much information that every single person that comes into contact with him is touched by him and remarks on how well he's able to remember little small details. And I think it's those little small details that make people really take to him as a man.
So then a question to both of you. Who do you think has been his best signing ever? Like, what's that one player that stays in your mind that has always epitomised what Ferguson stood for and what Man United stand for? Dave, I'll let you go. I guess Stephen's spoken with the shirt. And Dave, who's your choice?
It has to be Eric Cantona, doesn't it? We went from 26 years without a title. We have Dion Dublin up front. He breaks his leg. United are crying out for a talisman that can take us to that next level. We signed Cantona for $1 million, which is unbelievable now. And he takes us to the promised land. And it's not only what he did as himself as a player, but the work ethic that he instilled into the lads from the class of '92, the likes of David Beckham, Scholes, Ryan Giggs, and the Neville brothers and Nicky Butt. What he did took the club to the next level and allowed us to be successful for years to come on the back of the work ethic that he instilled into those young lads.
And then you, Dave, who's your choice?
No, I think Cantona's got to be up there and how he moved United forward and pushed them on. But I think it's got to be Cristiano Ronaldo for me. I just think that the development of Cristiano Ronaldo coming to Manchester United as a flashy, as a tricky winger in a way, and ended up winning the Ballon d'Or and scoring those 42 goals in 49 games. What a phenom he was. And he's still obviously at that top level. And the only reason why he's at that top level is Manchester United and Sir Alex Ferguson and the work that him and his staff did with Ronaldo, the challenges that they set, the development of his finishing. And it's an incredible, obviously, the money that United got from the sale. Of course, Ronaldo wanted to play for Real Madrid, and fair enough, he didn't hide that. But that signing was absolutely incredible, and it changed. Obviously, the Cantona signing defined United in the 90s, more than the likes of Andy Cole, more than Dwight York. It was Cantona that defined it. But I think in 2000, if we're looking at that era, it was all about Cristiano Ronaldo. One, though, that goes under the radar massively, Edwin van der Sar, £2 million. For Man United, of course, he broke records and set a Premier League record of the most consecutive minutes played without, conceding a goal, 1,032 minutes. The guy was unbelievable. His positioning was fantastic. And to get him for $2 million, arguably one of the bargains of the century, like someone like a Cantona, a brilliant bargain. But I've got to give it to Ronaldo just because of what Ronaldo has become and what he did at Manchester United.
So if we look...
There's been so many. You can't just limit it to those two or three. I mean, you talk about Wayne Rooney, the career that he went on at Manchester United, breaking some of his all-time record. You speak about goalkeepers, Edwin van der Sar. Well, I think David De Gea's in there, and I think Peter Schmeichel's signed in as well. Has got to be in there. I think that's like 200 grand or something we signed him for. Every single person that's got. I mean, Rio Ferdinand at £30 million is a bargain for what we got out of him. There's been so many top class signings. It was there, like I said, 26 years. There's got to be some unbelievable signings. There's going to be some rotters. But there was some unbelievable signings, and we wouldn't have been successful without either of them. So
then Roy Keane as well, 3.75 million. We forgot Roy Keane. Big Roy is going to be very angry with us. But again, what a player he was. 99, unbelievable.
So in terms of Sir Alex Ferguson's legacy, do you think there'll ever be a manager who's able to repeat his feats in terms of just the longevity, the ability to keep winning trophies, and just the way in which he just managed the whole of the club? That question to you, Statman.
I hope so. I hope United do see another Sir Alex Ferguson. That would be amazing. Of course, we've been blessed by having one. Having two would be quite greedy. But at the same time, I think if you look at the money in the game and how managers these days, the top managers, they move around. They want to achieve in Germany. They want to achieve in England. They want to achieve in Spain. And they don't have that same drive that Ferguson had. The hard work. He wasn't the greatest player technically. He wasn't a blessed like a Ronaldo or Messi. He had to graft for his position, and he grafted hard and played for Rangers, played for some really big clubs. Then as a manager, you take about what he did there, first in the training ground, last guy to leave, and that work rate and that dedication sort of mixes with where football's going in terms of the short-termism and the money that's involved. I just can't see it happening again. But if it were to happen, we need to sort of appreciate it. I think that's a big thing. You've got to stick by the manager, and that is the key message that Ferguson had at Manchester United through his whole tenure, was the support of the board, was the backing of the fans, the backing of the club. And in this media environment that we've created, I don't know if that's possible anymore, but I think it needs to happen because we've had these great managers, the likes of Busby, the likes of Ferguson, the likes of Wenger, that have been at a club for so long and have defined that club for generations. And I'd like to see it again, but I don't think I can see it happening.
So then to you, Stephen Howson, in terms of your memory of Sir Alex Ferguson's era as Manchester United manager, what's your favourite moment and which was your favourite team?
think my favourite team is probably the 1999 side. I think it's a slightly bit more romantic. I think the 2008 side was probably better, but the 1999 side, I was a kid. I was 15, 16, watching that team and just being absolutely blown away, watching my team be the best team in Europe. That's Sir Alex Ferguson's legacy to me. I mean, I'd never known anything different. I started going in 1990. We won an FA Cup, and we pretty much won something every single year until like the mid 2000s. So success was all I knew under Sir Alex Ferguson, and he's raised the bar of expectation. If there's not a title challenge at Manchester United, people are losing their hair, and that's because of Sir Alex. We went 26 years before him without winning a title, and we've gone 5 without him, and people are absolutely losing their mind. I think we will win the title again, but like Dave says, whether we see another legacy like this, it took us to find Sir Alex Ferguson after Sir Matt Busby to be able to find someone who could stay for more than 5 years. In Massoum, we had like Frank O'Farrell and Sexton and Ron Atkinson, and none of them was able to stand up to the great man Sir Matt Busby. What Sir Alex did, arguably, in terms of the success of the trophies, I'm not sure you can say what he did was better than what Sir Matt did. I mean, Sir Matt obviously had to deal with the tragedy of Munich and got us back to the top of the world under those circumstances. It's obviously a different time and different circumstances for Sir Alex, but he was hyper successful in the time that he was there. If we can find somebody else that can stay around for 10, 15, 20 years and have any sort of level of success that Sir Matt or even Sir Alex did, then we have to cherish them. And I think it's going to be a long time looking, but we always have to strive for that. Like we always strive to try and win a treble again. Like we always strive to try and win the Champions League again. It's not very realistic that we're going to do that season and season, but we have to try and strive for that because that's what Manchester United should be. One man with a club building them in his image, playing youngsters, winning everything in sight.
And then finally, a question to both of you. During those eras in Ferguson's era when you weren't winning, whether it's like 1 year or 2 years, what did it feel like to be a fan? Did you always feel like, yeah, next year's going to be our year? And how does that compare to now where it's been a good period where you haven't won the title?
I think you always knew, you always believed in Ferguson and his ideas and what he was doing. The back end of Ferg at United was signing players like Shinji Kagawa. And he mentioned, after he left United, that he'd target players like Marco Reus, like Matt Hummels, like Ilkay Gundogan. And that is where football was going. And Ferguson knew that. And that's what he always had, that foresight to how do we move this team on? How do we adopt the style? How are the best guys in Europe doing that? And how do we beat them? And that's what Ferguson sort of thought. The next team that he wanted to build would have been like Borussia Dortmund under Jurgen Klopp. That was an incredibly exciting team. And I think that's it. You always had the belief when he let one of the big players go, he knew that there was someone coming in the wings that would take over. Like when Ronaldo left, Rooney had a great spell of a few seasons where he was pretty much unplayable when he was fit. And that's what the beauty of Ferguson was. It was always the next level. What is the next step? And for, the team that would have been under Ferguson, may have been Shinji Kagawa, may have been someone like Matt Hummels playing centre-half. Would have been incredible. And then
yourself, Stephen, how did it feel during those eras where you weren't winning, but you had faith in Ferguson that he could find the way to win in comparison to now?
I think it's mad that those periods from that 3 years where we didn't win the title in the mid-2000s, when you saw Arsenal's invincibles and then you saw Chelsea's back-to-back champions, we still thought we could win the league. And that might have been mad to think because at the time we had Tim Howard in net and we had Bellion in the team and Kleberson in midfield and Kieran Richardson was playing, and we had no right to think that we was going to do anything with that team. But Sir Alex found a way. I think he's shown that when he stepped away, we went from being champions to 7th. And what was the difference? The difference was he wasn't there. The team was largely the same. And I think that was just the X factor was Sir Alex Ferguson. There was always an air of expectation that you'd go to Old Trafford and see United win. We would win 17, 18 league games at home a season. And it was nothing special. That's what happens. Sir Alex, like I said earlier, he raised our expectations to the point where unparalleled success is not enough. We've been successful under Jose Mourinho to an extent. We haven't won a title, we haven't challenged for the Champions League, but we've been relatively successful. I'm not sure Ferguson would have survived if Ferguson had to follow Ferguson, if you understand what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. If the 1986 Sir Alex Ferguson had followed on. Now, he wasn't successful when he came. Ron Atkinson had finished 3rd and 4th, I think, in 4 years. Twice 3rd, twice 4th, something along those lines. And when Sir Alex came, I think he took us down to 13th or 16th. And then he took us up to like 4th. And then he took us back down to 11th. So when you look at the way football fans act now, everyone have been going, he's taking us backwards. We finished 4th last year. Now we're 11th this year. I had the good fortune to speak to Martin Edwards, United chairman at the time, and he said there was never a doubt in his mind. Even though when you see all of those "Tara Fergie" banners, it's time to go, and the people saying that the FA Cup game in 1990 would have sealed his future if we hadn't have progressed. Martin Edwards says we knew what was coming. We knew that the scouting network had been overhauled. We knew that we had an academy side or a youth team side at the time that was starting to become competitive, and Sir Alex had plans on bringing these lads into the first team because we could see the work that was going on behind the scenes, and we had every confidence in him. That's what we need at the moment, is we need a board that's got the vision to appoint someone that they've done a lot of work on and a lot of research on, and not just appointing the biggest name that's available. And they need to give that guy 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to be able to implement his vision and work his vision and make the first 11 and the club in his image. Otherwise, you might as well just have the owners picking the team if the manager's changing week in, week out, which is probably what goes on at Chelsea.
On that bombshell, I want to thank you again for joining us, guys. It was an amazing talk about Sir Alex Ferguson and his impact on your lives as Manchester United fans. Once again, if you want to follow the two guys, you can check out Stephen Howson's YouTube channel and Statman Dave's YouTube channel in that comment section. Make sure you subscribe. Each week we have debates, but today was a discussion. So thanks for joining us today, guys. I'll see you again another time.